Hi, I'm going to give an overview here of Access databases, and I'm assuming that this is really quite new to you, so I'm going to go in from the very basic stuff. And what I've done is I have got a couple of online videos which I'll jump into because I've chosen the best parts of them. But when you first click the Access icon to run Access for the first time, it'll come up with a choice of a custom web app, which is, it'll actually build an Access database which is entered, the data comes in and out of it via the web, and that's a possibility for the Year 13 assignment we currently have. Blank database, that'll be a desktop. If you see that symbol, anything that you're opening there is a web app. And there is one which I've downloaded, which I'll come to later, which is an option if you search online for templates up here, and if you type in library, you'll get this little guy, and I'll show you a bit through that. But first of all, let's jump into a tutorial about what is an Access database. And this is from lynda.com, and I've stopped their video just where I want it to be, and you can listen. This is about quite a long one, but it's stopped at a good place.
So what is an Access database? An Access database is not just a place to store your data, it's a tool for creating a custom application that wraps the entire interaction between you, your team, and the data. Access is a collection of tools that allow you to efficiently process data, moving it in and out of the database, maintain the quality of the data and ensure that it remains consistently entered and valid, gain insight into the trends, areas of opportunities, and performance metrics through a series of analytical processes, construct organized and detailed reports to help guide informed decisions, and automate tasks to help prevent processing errors and speed up workflows. Simply put, a well-crafted Access database can give you way more than you put into it. To do all of that, an Access database uses 5 main components. These components are collectively called database objects, and each has a unique role to play in managing your data. The first object is a table. Tables are where the data lives. They provide a structured home organized into fields and records. The next objects are queries.
I'll just pause there. It's worth noting that no database can exist without tables. Theoretically, you could have a database without queries, but it would just be lists of data. So you must have tables. Everything else is built on the table.
Queries are literally questions that you have about the data. Queries scour through your data tables to find the answer to a question, and then return an answer as filtered or calculated list of records that look and function just like a table. Forms provide interactive framework for your database. They hold buttons for moving from task to task, text entry fields to help you enter data into your tables, and input areas to help you define the parameters for a query or report. Reports gather information from a table or query and then format them for a standardized page layout, ready to be printed, exported, or emailed to colleagues. Finally, macro objects are sets of programmatic instructions that you will create that tell the database how to function when you click on a button or interact with a form or other object. They can automate some fairly complex tasks. It is the interaction of these 5 components that makes a database function. For instance, a form might help you enter data into a table. A query will then filter those records to a specific subset, and then a report will format that subset of records for printing. To create our objects, we'll be using multiple working modes called views. These can be grouped into 2 categories. The standard view is the one you'll use when you're working with your data. Depending on the object, we'll use datasheet, form, report, or print preview views. These will display our objects when we're working with the information contained within the database. The other views are used when creating or modifying the structure of the objects. The design, layout, and SQL views all allow you to define how the database functions. Finally, it's important to understand the relational structure of an Access database. Take a look at the following problematic table of contact phone numbers. In this table, you'll notice that the first and last names are repeated over and over again every time that there is an additional contact phone number. We can structure this data differently, but that introduces a new problem. Now we have lots of blank cells where individuals don't have a contact number of each type. Further, this table won't grow very well. What if we wanted to add a fax number for one individual, or a second office number? We would have to alter the structure of the table to add an additional column to accommodate those types of changes. A relational database solves both problems. Unlike a flat file database, such as an Excel spreadsheet, Access organizes data into multiple tables that connect to each other through common fields called keys. Using the exact same data, we can organize our phone numbers like this, where we have one table that's just about people and another table that's just about phone numbers. By linking the two tables together with a key, in this case an employee ID, we can accommodate growth and prevent inefficiencies in our storage. We can easily add new people or additional types of contact numbers without altering the structure of the tables. We'll expand on all of these concepts throughout this course, and we'll be creating several objects in each of the 5 types, hooking them together to build a relational database that will efficiently store data, return answers to our questions, perform analysis, and generate reports.
Pausing it there.
Starting Access for the first time is pretty straightforward.
Going back, I want to pause it there. Yep. Okay, pausing here. One thing to note about database design is that if you want an excellence, one of the criteria is that there should be no duplication of data anywhere. And you saw on the first table they were showing you with James Abbott, James Abbott, James Abbott. That's duplication of data. Here, the duplication is solved by having a key, a primary key, and a, what do you call this one, a foreign key in another table. And there's no duplication. So you don't actually have Robert Acosta listed here at all, you just have his employee number. Now if you're going to call that a duplication, it's actually not, because they're both keys and they relate to each other. So that's not duplication, the fact there's a 2 there and a 2 there. What would be duplication is if James Abbott, the name for James Abbott under 1 was also in this table. And the idea is that one method of making sure your database is accurate is by only, thank you, no I don't, is by only having James Abbott written on your database once. So if you had him twice in 2 different tables, there's the possibility that if you wiped James Abbott from one, he would stay on the other. Or you may spell James wrong in one and correct in the other, or Abbott, etc. So always be aware that we're looking to break your data down to small bits to go on tables and use keys to join them. Alrighty, now we're going to jump to a second thing to say here. Just before I go, notice that the naming convention for each of these fields, the naming convention is capital for the first word and then capital for the second, and there's no gaps. It is actually possible to use the database with gaps in it, but it's very poor practice, and there have been occasions where whole databases have fallen over because the gaps can tend to confuse the program if very complex things are done, such as macros. So always good practice to just put a first name as one word and that the capital denotes the second of what is normally 2 words but joined. It is also a possibility to put an underscore. Some people don't like having a no gap situation there, and so they go first underscore name. Not many do that. Most database operators are conversant with, I think it's called camel naming, I can't remember, with humps, and I think most are conversant with this way. So this is probably the best way to name your tables. I will escape out of this and flick to the second one I have prepared for you, which should be here. This is a webinar, and it's produced by Office. The last one you were looking at just then is Microsoft Access 2030 Central Training, and that's put out by lynda.com, and you're allowed to, this is 5 hours worth, so this is a pretty good one to look through, and if you've got time, structure it over a few days so that you can take notes about where the part they're talking about is applicable to what you're currently looking for. And so you go through that and make a chapter heading if you want. I don't think they give you one anywhere that I could see. However, if you pay money and join lynda.com for a small fee, they will give you the files that they work on throughout this whole exercise. And if you move this over, you can see that a lot of files are using on the way through those 5 odd hours. Okay, so the webinar is produced by Microsoft itself, and this is from the Office blog series. I found it by searching for tables, designing tables. I actually wanted to look at information on the best table design or the best database design. One of the requirements of any student building a database is that they must produce a plan, or a design if you like, of what tables relate to what tables. The 5 aspects of a database that we just looked at previously, those 5 need to be described in your plan. So what are your queries going to do? What are your tables going to do? How are they going to relate to one another? What forms will you use for reporting? Will your queries, by the way, will they be a query which appends the information on a table? So this is to the Office blogs, and I'm going to show you here this particular little part. So these guys are talking about what is a database, and I'll just zoom in slightly so you can see them amazingly. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the other thing that you need to understand about any Access database, it doesn't matter which kind, this applies to apps and it also applies to desktop databases, is that a database is made up of 5 components or types of components that we just generically refer to as database objects. And those components are tables and queries, forms, reports, and macros. Okay. So tables are, well, tables are where your data lives. Okay, they're the backbone of your database, and frankly, if you don't have tables, you don't have a database. So, and you can see that in this particular table, these are the 2 books, and in this table, these are the 2 people that I entered. Right. Now, queries are questions that you ask of your data. For example, who has my books checked out? And assets with transactions here is kind of a techno-geek way of saying who has my books checked out. Right. So you can see the 2 books, and if you scroll over, you can see the 2 people who have them checked out. Okay. Now, forms are data entry forms, is what they mean by this. And forms really do 2 things. They make data entry a lot easier and a lot more accurate. And you can tell because you can see this form wants you to enter Dave's first name, or enter a first name in one field and then a last name in another. And they can also make data entry a lot faster as well, because if you're out there in a table, you have to enter something and then you have to tab over or use the arrow keys or tap, and you have to go across like this. But if all you have is a form, then you can just fly right along.
Okay,
and you only enter what's really necessary as well. Now, reports are how you present your data visually. Okay? In Excel, you can just grab a chart or a graph and you can drop it anywhere into that big grid of data. With Access, you have to do that in a report. And this is also where you print.
Okay. So that's a little bit different of a model if you're used to Excel or actually anything, PowerPoint, Word.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is where you go for visually representing your data. Okay.
Yes. Now, macros are a subject all their own. They're how you automate the database. They're how you make something happen when you click a button. And this is an example of a macro, and you can see it looks kind of long and kind of complex, but please don't be intimidated by this, okay?
It looks scary.
Yeah. But it's something that you start with simple macros, like, say, button clicks, and then you move from there.
Do you have to go right into macros when you first learn Access?
You don't.
You can use the other 4.
Yes, you can create all sorts of databases that don't use macros, and you'll be fine.
Okay. But it's nice to know about. It can help with automating things, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that does it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's our general intro to Access.
And that'll do for us too. I just wanted to show you the overview of Access training courses offered by the support part of Microsoft Office. And it's the 3-part series overview, so Access Basics 1, 2 and 3. Although they give you a little wee one here, create your first Access 2013 database. That's a fairly quick one, doing a template. What we saw earlier on in this video was this webinar, Intro to Access 2013. It's 15 minutes. I showed you about 5 of it. If you click this, you can watch online. This is for beginners, and it just comes straight up to it, and will show you down here a overview or an overview of what's contained in the video, and it's quite helpful because they've got each part labeled with how long. So key concepts and terms is 4 minutes 35, and you can scroll through here. When they've got more, you can see whatever's there. So it's quite quick to work your way through, and what I like about this is if you're trying to do a particular skill, table designer and table design view, and I'm not too familiar with it, you can quickly jump to here and click on that one. It'll pull it up, and then you can jump into it. I did like, by the way, this overview they gave at the very start in section number 1. If I double click that, press play, will it work? My internet is quite slow. I will back out of this for a second. There I am, slowly getting to it. So this is using the designer, this table designer. Alright, and if I press play, I'd get it, and then I can zoom it in, etc. So my internet is slightly slow.
In the previous session, we saw how to build a table in Datasheet view, and we looked at the data types you assign to the fields in your tables.
So that gives you a preview,
We also
preview of what you're looking at.